always talk about our brand.
Yeah, guys, welcome to the advisory board podcast. I've got a special guest with me today, Heidi Morrissey, and she is the president of now two brands. You guys probably know her with Kitchen Tune Up. Now that's Bathroom Tune Up, right?
Yep, Bath Tune Up. Yep.
Bath Tune Up. So, Heidi, I'm not going to try to do more of an intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your brands. You've got an interesting story about how you're tied into franchising. So, tell us about you before we jump into the session.
All right. Well, 33 years ago, I'll start there. My dad decided to start a franchise brand called Kitchen Tune Up. I joined him in 2003 when he wanted a little bit more time to travel, and took over the company in 2017. And we've been talking about launching another brand for a while, and it really just kind of needed the timing to really happen. And so, we had a lot of growth over the last 3 years, and we were also looking at partnering with a larger company to help us scale and grow. And so we were acquired by HFC at the end of 2020, and we also launched internally to our existing franchises first, Bath Tune Up. And so we now have two brands. We have around 210 Kitchen Tune Up franchises and 22 Bath Tune Up franchises.
Okay, not a bad jump start.
Yeah, that was a good jump start right off the bat.
That's great. Yeah, I love it. And guys, one of the reasons I wanted Heidi to join me is because this is a topic that isn't new, but it's something that I've learned a lot by working with many franchise brands, talking with many of you about where your struggles have been. And the world has pivoted, as we all know, around virtual discovery days, virtual conferences, virtual lots of things. But the reason I wanted to bring Heidi in is because I saw super early on her team innovate rapidly and do, I'd say, just an outstanding job incorporating what was generally a very tactile, sit down in a room, look at product, look at all these things, right, that are involved in a kitchen tune-up project. Learn how to scope and quote and do the construction, like all this stuff that was very tactile. And a lot of brands have been struggling with this specifically of, well, we're a maid service brand, or we're a carpet or a flooring brand, or like we're doing all these things that are very tactile, and we're trying to figure out how to crack the code to do it virtually well, because it's a little awkward if you don't know how to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about conferences, about different things that they've been able to do well, discovery days virtually, and I'd say probably as good as I've seen anyone do it. So thanks for joining us, Heidi, and imparting some wisdom upon us. Tell us, this kind of caught us all by surprise last year when COVID kind of shut travel down, and yet many of you had big pipelines of people that wanted to buy franchises. In fact, there was a little bit of time where I think the COVID shutdown froze things, but then things got really busy, and then they tapered, and then they got real busy again with franchise development. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you guys initially start to kind of metamorphose into what you're doing today with your discovery days?
Yeah, when the shutdown really officially happened, we were in the middle of training school here. So we had people in our room, and things were shutting down around us. And so we knew, just like everyone, we had a moment where we probably froze for a minute and said, okay, what are we going to do? How long will this last? Is this just 2 weeks? Is this 3 weeks? And very quickly, our pipeline was pretty full, and we knew that we did not want to delay openings. And after talking to the prospective, franchisees, they didn't want to delay either. They were more than excited to move forward if we could find a way to get the training. And we were pretty lucky because a few years ago, we had already launched a pre-training program online. So we were already very familiar with a learning system that, was quizzing and getting people prepared. And we used it for homework, and we used it for post-training. So we had a little bit of experience, and we knew right away the best thing would probably be to go with the Zoom, because it was just the most user-friendly. And we also decided that we had to find a way to get that interaction, as you mentioned, because there were a few things that at least people wanted to put their hands on.
Yeah.
So we started to think about, if I had to send you everything that you touched in school, what would that look like? And we put a couple of tables in the back, and we started putting everything out, and we started to rewrite some of the agenda to fit if it was done virtually. And so our first virtual school was the last week of May in 2020, and we had 20 attendees. Wow. If I remember correctly. It was a combination of brand new franchises, some of their managers, as well as some of our existing franchises that thought this would be a good idea. We ended up sending everybody 13 additional boxes of stuff. So they got some different doors. We did the damage that we would normally do in our lab, and we sent that to everybody. We just and we sent them little daily gifts like we normally would. We did all of our hospitality things that we would normally do with a school, and we just decided to incorporate them virtually. And then the next step was really to teach the attendee how to have a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
So once we got all of our cameras hanging from the ceiling and all of our monitors surrounding us and our, umbrella lights around us, and we had checked our spot and we had a nice cushy thing to stand on all day, we said to our attendees, we think that the best way to experience this is with bigger screens. So not just your computer. We wanted you to take HDMI cords, and we want you to hook this up to your television, and we want you to have multiple screens for different things. And we want you to share that with us. Show us your pictures of your setups. We want to see your little command station. And so we did that. And I think that really was helpful. And obviously we asked for a lot of feedback, throughout the day. One thing that I found that was really helpful is, because we weren't able to just meet with them in the hallway or talk to them during a break, at the end of every day, each attendee got to meet with one of the home office team members and do like a little quick, rundown of the day. Was there any questions you to get answered? I think that was pretty critical.
Yeah. Yeah, and tell us a little bit about those meetings, because I'm sure that was an easy metamorphosis. Like, people, they're not getting this usual hallway discussion. What types of things were coming out in those one-on-ones early on?
Yeah, so the first thing, we used the Zoom rooms, of course. So we had someone break everybody into their little rooms. So they, again, you have to remember, last year in May, everyone was still really wowed by the technology.
Yeah,
I know we're a little fatigued by it now, but back then that was still really exciting. And so we had a list of questions that we would ask, and a lot of times they just wanted to say, gosh, I learned a lot, or boy, there was just so much information, just like you would see attendees live talking to each other as they were leaving the classroom, right? And the one thing we learned after the first school was really to keep the room open longer so the classmates could talk to each other. We also learned about inviting in existing franchise owners to come and interact maybe during breaks or lunch, so they could start to interact with their fellow Tunies that they were going to get to know. So that really started to change some things too, because we couldn't do that in lab trainings. We couldn't bring other Tunies in too that had been around that they could question. So that became a huge benefit of saying to people, hey, we've got this training school. Does anyone want to jump in on a lunch, or does anyone want to jump in and do a session, in the middle here during a break time? And again, our owners loved it because they wanted to get to know everyone. They wanted to interact. And a brand new baby Toonie thought it was amazing because they were able to meet those people they've been hearing about in training and even through validation.
That's fantastic. Tell me, do you find an opportunity to incorporate more of like your suppliers and your partners into the training and discovery day where you couldn't really do that before?
We haven't with kitchen tune-up, but with bath tune-up, we've done a lot of supplier live training. We like it a lot. So we're looking at doing it. I think a lot of times, with what we found during our convention is that the technology wasn't as comfortable for a lot of our suppliers.
Yeah, I could imagine. Cabinet guys, granite guys, like all sorts of different, I could imagine.
Yep. When we sent everyone cameras and ring lights and we had everybody, practice and stuff, but it wasn't their comfort zone. The bath suppliers for us, they do a lot of this. I don't know why there's a difference between the two areas of building, but they've been very well versed in this. And so when we invited them to do it, they jumped all over it, and they love doing the live interaction right away because it saves them a lot of questions too. So I do believe we want to kind of go back and revisit that, because even if they did it once a quarter or once every 6 months, you could record it and use it as a recording then.
Yeah. The reason I asked that is early on, that was something I saw pivot almost immediately, where some of our partners, we're a tech company. We do all sorts of interesting things on this, CRM sales automation side with these brands that we work with. And then they approached me, several of them, and said, especially the growing brands, that were like, we need to do something different to make this engaging. Can you join us? Can you? Before, there's no way, right? There's no way we could go to 50 different monthly like trainings like that, but over Zoom, like they'd schedule me in. I'd sit down and show people the tools that they were going to be using to run their businesses and scale their sales. And then over time, with several of them, we just recorded a session, so they'd have a 15-minute, very compact intro from the expert, and realize what they told me is we started to feel like the participants started to feel like there was a real depth to our organization, because even though you guys have a great staff, everyone operates super lean in the franchisor office. And so they realize, oh, it's not just, the CEO and the C-suite and then the 10 support people. It's like 50 different people. And they kept the pacing a little different. So I'm glad for this, especially for the bath tune-up, that's working well for you. But I've seen that be a really good best practice. If you've got a vendor that is tech savvy that you can use in, it breaks up the monotony. Plus the questions are different, the perspectives are different. You expand the depth of your team a little bit.
I like that idea. I think probably because we had such a tight agenda already with kitchen tune-up. I mean, it was pretty locked, and all we were really doing was duplicating it. And now we've started changing some things, and we have some different interactions and different amounts of time on screen. So we've changed quite a bit. I think now we have done 13 virtual training schools since last year between the two brands. So we've done a lot of virtual, and we're looking ahead to when we're going to go back live again, I think in the next few months. But we've also decided that instead of doing the entire time here in South Dakota, we will be doing probably a half and half situation, because we found that there are some things that are actually better served virtually.
Yeah, no, I'll bet. And I have to ask you a question about that. So let's take it back just 2 minutes to the 13 boxes that you guys sent out for the first group, right? And I'm sure, did you start to pare that down a little bit?
No, it's still 13 boxes.
So there had to be somebody who was like, now, wait a minute, this is ludicrous. We're going to spend so much money on shipping product. How did you overcome that concern? Because I guarantee that had to come up, right?
Well, I mean, there's different costs when they're live, and there's different costs when they're virtual. I think they equal out ultimately, because the things that we sent, they would have still gotten a lot of those things. We still would have used those materials while they were here. We just, they're just getting them in their home now. So really the shipping costs, it's if you looked at what we would have spent, in maybe live meals out or different things, I think it would have probably equaled out.
That's a good point. They would have had the same supplies anyway in the club.
Exactly. We had to use them anyway, but we just need to get them in their hands.
And that's one of the things I saw you guys doing early on. I was like, wow, like you're investing in your people right up front, and you're not afraid to, so what it's going to cost us money to ship this stuff, where I think a lot of people said, pandemic, money, let's just do it over Zoom. We'll show them what the cabinets look like. I think a lot of people probably would have done something like that rather than put it in their hands and give them that tactile experience. So kudos to you for not letting the cost of something, and thinking about it in that terms of, well, they were here, we'd be buying them dinner anyway. So love that.
You have to still give a great training experience. And if you're trying to talk about something, and most people have to have their hands on things to learn it. You can see something, you can see a PowerPoint or whatever. It's just not the same as being able to, we would say open box number 1 today. And they would know that day 1 was box 1 or day 2, and we'd have them get it ready. And we'd have them have a table in front of them. They could lay everything out, so that throughout the training, we would say, now everyone show us this or show us that throughout. So, it was very much interactive that way.
How fun. Yeah.
You said change our brains a little too.
Yeah, you're like, no, Bob, that's actually the blue cabinet. I need the green cabinet.
And so it might just be a product. It could be a tool that they would learn. And, if it was live, we would have passed something around, or they would have gotten up in the room and looked at it. So they would have gotten that material anyway. It's just that we gave it to them earlier, and they just had, we had it more organized. So when they opened it, they probably learned it quicker. I have to say, the one thing I really learned was from the virtual school compared to somebody doing live training. I found that the startup was quicker and faster, and that they were able to really start to grow their businesses even faster than somebody that came through a live training. And I was trying to figure that out for a while. And I realized that part of it was that they literally physically were holding everything instead of a group sharing something that they might have seen. And the other part was it was recorded, and they could go back and watch it immediately. So you know how that is during the day when you're, digesting your lunch, and maybe you space off for an hour when something's but if you knew you could go back then and quick watch it, like if you didn't feel like you really understood that, then people were going back and rewatching, or they were rewatching it with their spouse later on. And so I feel like the information was sinking in a little harder.
Yeah. Do you find now, I'm just thinking now 2 steps down the road, did you find that as they were starting to bring staff on, that there was less of a burden on corporate to train them, because they already had the materials in hand to train? They had the pre-recorded and say, watch this and I'll show you this.
That's right.
Take some of that burden off.
Yes, it was amazing. You know, a lot of times I remember when I used to do a lot more training, I would always have people say, you know, can I just record you saying that, or can we record that? There wasn't a great way to really record your whole training session, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to have a camera, people are moving around, you know, you don't want to just stay static. Well, you don't have a choice with virtual, you're pretty static, and, you know, you can hold things up. So, I mean, what an opportunity to record, you know, some of your best trainings, you know, so that people can really go back and review. And we could kind of grade ourselves too throughout. We could say, I mean, that one was so much better. Make sure you use October school.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to send that to someone, I think October, like, just landed better, or was a better discussion or something like that.
Yeah, you get a mulligan. That's the nice part about recording it every
That's
month.
right.
Yeah, September, destroy that one, please. All digital
And, you
copy.
know, and we can invite our owners that have been around for a while. You know, I've got owners that have been with us for 28 years, you know, and
Yeah.
for them to just travel back for 8 days for training may seem like a little bit of overkill, right? So what about coming into this one and going to this day and then really kind of engaging with that class? And so it opened up the doors. We send the agenda out to all of our owners, every school, and they're able to attend any session they want.
That's cool. Yeah, I love that. I love that, because as good as our franchisees are, sometimes the older ones, they tend to kind of get in a rut, and they kind of sell the same product set and look for the same problems because they want to sell the same solutions, but they're missing
Right.
sometimes 50% of their opportunities because they're not comfortable with something that they missed in training, or it's a new product line that they got a quick training on later, and they're like, yeah, I'm a linoleum guy, right? Like, they're like, hey, it's not 1970 anymore. We've got to move forward. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's very cool.
We've had over 14 new suppliers in the last like 16 months. So, I mean, they're all just add-ons to what we've had, looking for, you know, different solutions or different timeframes or even a different product line sometimes. And this gives them the opportunity to get a little bit more in depth. And again, everybody in every class has different discussions, and those discussions prompt ideas and thoughts.
Mhm.
And that's what's really valuable in trainings is, you know, that's why I love new trainings, because a new franchise will bring up something that you hadn't thought of before. And all of a sudden now you're thinking about your business a little differently. So I love that. I
Mm.
love discussion time.
Oh yeah. Well, and the fact that you're incorporating your franchisees, like current owners, like, oh, this is Bob. He's the one that really started, exploding the market with this new product that we're doing. Bob, how did that go?
Right.
It's so much. I mean, you and I both know peer-to-peer validation in franchising is always way more potent than
Right.
franchisor validation. So that's really
Right.
cool. Love it. So do you typically, do you invite them specifically to a segment, say, hey, I want you to be here for this one so you can answer questions, or just, if you want to come? How do you guys typically plan that?
So what we've moved to, on our 13th training or 14th training, is our advisory council that we have. When we met, they always ask, you know, how can we help support, you know, we call them the baby Tunies a lot for a little bit. You know what, you guys are growing fast. You guys have put a lot of new franchises. I think we did over 75 franchises in 2020. So when you have that much growth happening, you need to, you know, understand, how do they get to know each other? What are their, you know, needs? And our council came up with the idea that during our 12-week program, where we basically meet with the whole class once a week, and we go through like a segment of information, they've decided that they will jump on and be a part of that. So each one of them have a different week. And so that allows them to know they're going to be there. And, you know, this is the topics that week, and here's what they're going to help us with, so that they can elaborate. They can put it into real life practice for the new Toonie that's listening. They are now getting the opportunity. So I think the council, it was such a great, you know, I would never have asked that of them, right? To me, that's a huge ask.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we do schools every 6 weeks. Would you guys be willing to give us, you know, this time? But they actually said, we would like to do that. We would like to help.
Well, that speaks a little bit to culture that you guys have there, which is awesome. You know, so guys, these are the green flags you're looking for if you're looking into franchising, or frankly, other CEOs of other franchise brands. If you're not seeing the same sort of volunteerism across your franchisees, look up Heidi on LinkedIn and pick her brain about that. This is a legacy, though, right? This is a legacy of your father and you and the family, like in the way you guys have created the culture around the brand. It's hard to do. It's deliberate. And that's impressive, though.
You know, I don't know if it was deliberate. I've had people ask me that before. I think it was somewhat accidental, just being who we were and family. And our owners, they'll ask me a lot about that. Like, will the culture change as we keep growing so fast? And I'm like, you guys are the culture now. You guys know what it means to be in our Tuniverse. and what it means to invite someone in and what that looks like. And so they kind of all take ownership of the culture.
Yeah.
And they don't just leave it to the home office to come up with everything. So I think that, yeah, maybe it happened that way, and maybe we're just super blessed and lucky that it happened to kind of roll out, but we embraced it. We embraced the kind of goofiness of, saying Tunies and Tuniverse and all of these. Our owners like to call us the homies, and so we have, and we're cool with that, like, because this is what allows us to not have those barriers maybe that some franchise businesses have sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you're breaking down a lot of the walls of corporate versus field, and versus Z's versus, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. And your culture, your the way you guys communicate is fun. I remember I saw my first post from you, I was like, Tunies. That's so clever and funny. And I was just kind of curious, like, is that because sometimes you just see like corporate branding stuff?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's cute, but it'll never really go anywhere. Or sometimes it annoys the franchisees, right? I would see your franchisees commenting all the time and like saying funny stuff. And I was like, and it was different people. And I was like, this is a good culture.
They have a dictionary. They came up with it actually. I don't know what year it was. It was before I came that they were starting to call themselves Tunies. And then all of a sudden there was baby Tunies. And then there was Tunisauruses for the older franchises. And it just kind of kept evolving into this longer and longer dictionary.
That's hilarious. I worked in a group where we had acronyms. We worked with Microsoft and Adobe, a bunch of companies. They all have acronyms everywhere. So we started making comical like dictionaries and like, we're like a cheat sheet. So you knew what people were talking about in meetings. And that sounds funny. Like, but it was organic, which is the best part about it.
Exactly. If you can be organic and you can just embrace it, as opposed to saying, no, we have to be more serious than that. We like to say we tunify kitchens, and now we tunify baths, and the people that do that for us are, we don't say employees, we say tunifiers, so you can make anything fun.
Yeah.
You might need to have a fun name maybe to start with, but
well, but let's be honest, kitchen tune-up doesn't scream like fun and exciting, but you guys have made that fun, right? You guys have made it. Yeah, which is what I love. Well, let me pivot just for a second, because we've been talking all about training, which I think you guys just knock out of the ballpark. Discovery days was the other part of that equation. Like, before they come for training and they're committed, like, we've got to get them through this experience. And a lot of people, we chatted about this before, but a lot of people felt like, oh no, I'm not going to get to go out drinking and partying or having this fun, exceptional experience, which wasn't ever really part of your culture in the first place, to be wild and crazy when people came into town. So what did you guys do? Like, how did you shift the discovery days and make those equally as engaging and because you had 75 units last year, so obviously discovery days were going well. They were on point.
Yeah, the funny thing about discovery days is probably 5 years ago, we stopped requiring a discovery day. We just didn't require them any longer. We do have a process where I do a live webinar once a month, and anyone that's kind of in the pipeline will maybe join that live webinar. And then our approval process, they do a one-on-one, conference with me, video conference ideally now. And so we've always kind of had a little different, and mainly it's our location. We're in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Most people wouldn't know where that is. We're, 5 hours west of Minneapolis, if that helps. And so flights in and out got to be a little challenging. We used to have about 4 flights a day, and then dropped it down to 2. So we stopped the requirement because we felt like, did they really need to come here? But we would have them if somebody wanted one. So the cool thing was, with this, we were able to start adding discovery day as part of our process again. As let's have it, let's talk. And so a couple things that we did that I feel were maybe a little different. They would still get a box from us, not 13, but they got a box. And in that box, we would have, we have these interactive paddles that we made where you can hold up a yes or a no or a question mark. So when you have 20 or 30 people and you ask something, you can get a consensus really quickly.
That's
and so we would send those. We would send obviously some branded materials. We would send out, an invitation for a lunch, Grubhub or something, depending on where they were located in the country, because not everyone has that access. And we'd send out a little bit of snacks like we would have on the table for them, something like that in this box for Discovery Day. And then when they showed up during the lunch, we would invite 1 or 2 franchise owners to join the lunch. And so while I said, you know what, guys, if we were sitting here live, we'd be eating lunch together. I would see your mouth moving. It would be okay. And give them permission to keep their cameras on so that we could eat like we normally would. So we would still break bread together. In that way, I would bring in something that I could usually eat with my hands, and we would have a quick lunch together. And I think that by having that interaction and again, I love being able to invite owners in that maybe they had talked to during validation or just to bring them in. But yeah, the discovery days have gone great because here's the other thing, we record them. If a spouse isn't able to make it, maybe they're not going to be active in the business, but they still are interested. They want to know. We always do a tour of the building. I think that's critical. We start outside and we walk to the door and we take them through just like you would if they showed up here live. You would take them on a tour, right?
Yeah.
You add the little things. You don't forget those things just because it's not live anymore. You add them in a different way.
Yeah, that's smart. I love what you said about recording it so it can be shared. I don't know how you feel about this, but we work with a lot of Fran Dev groups, and often after a discovery day, people drop off, and there's often a mystery associated with it. To me, I'm not shocked, because if I were going to go buy a franchise and I went out by myself, my wife stayed home because we have 4 kids and they're all busy in baseball and track and all that and figure skating. So, or she went out and then she came home because I couldn't get away from coaching baseball, then we would have this discussion and I would have 1,000 questions for her. And if I went, she would have 2,000 questions for me. And then she'd be like, now we're about to write a big check. So I need all these boxes checked. And my answer when I come home would often, it's like when I used to take the kids to the doctor. Well, did you ask them about X, Y, and Z? Didn't even think about that, sweetheart. She's like, okay, I'll call them, and I'm a pretty smart guy, but I forget stuff. So I think that's a challenge in a lot of couple or partner relationships, is that they don't feel like they're connected to it. And so they don't really want to buy into it.
When I find a lot of the younger, like we get a lot of millennials looking at, and I love the millennial buyers. I mean, they're just great franchises. They want to share it with their parents.
Yeah.
The parents aren't going to even probably be investors, but they're like, look at what we're thinking of doing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this? And so it gives you the opportunity to share it with a lot of different people that you would not have been able to. I mean, you're not going to talk for 5 hours and tell about your experience word for word, right? You're going to summarize it. And maybe there's something else that somebody sees in that video that is meaningful for them. Yeah.
Have you heard at all that somebody was checking with a partner or a friend about showing them the discovery day that was recorded, and then they're like, I think I might want to buy one of those. Have you had that happen?
Oh yeah, so we get a lot of people that will say, yeah, I was talking to so and so, and I showed them a little bit of what we're doing, and they just had no idea, right? They had no idea that something like this was franchise. Mm-hmm. Because again, we all know if you talk about franchises to the general population, they're going to think food franchises or something. They don't even think about home service as being an option. Mm-hmm. And so when they start to see that, they're like, well, that's interesting. I've got one right now who's kitchen tune-up, but they were showing them some things they were doing. They go, well, since you own this area, do you think I could buy the bath tuna? So because they couldn't get into the kitchen in the same area. So yeah, so I mean, those are definitely things that are going to happen, I think, as we become more transparent through virtual, discovery days or anything else that we're doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's something, if you don't mind me changing topics, something that came to mind as you were, we were talking about the Tuna culture, and this was not the topic we were going to discuss, but I want to ask. But it sounds like as part of your flow, even though you didn't require discovery days, one thing that was required was you had a one-on-one meeting with every Toonie that you brought into the fold. Is that right?
That's right.
So you're kind of the stewardess of the Tuna culture, ultimately, right? Like you have to make sure, for my company, and I tell people that I interview, I said, my role is actually, to find great talent, but also to protect our company culture, because I find that that's super important. As we continue to grow, I don't want that to go away. Of customers first, like everyone's on the team, like all those things that are critical for success. Right. What do you look for? Like, what are things that you're really trying to find, or is this too much? No,
it's okay. I'll tell you, just if I can't get them to laugh once, they probably aren't going to fit.
Okay, yeah.
Because I tend to think that I can be funny at times if I really try. But I mean, if we can't lighten up enough where we can have a conversation where we at least laugh a few times, smile a few times. And I've had a few times where people come in way too serious, and I can ask them, do you think you would have fun in a brand that does, like, can you be called a baby Toonie for a while? Is that going to be okay? And they're like, I don't know if I like that. It's like, I don't know if this would be the best brand, this might not be a good fit, because it's not just about being a business owner in a brand. It's about passion. Mm-hmm. It's about, you got to love the brand. We say that we bleed orange. I mean, that's one of our colors. And now we have bleed blue with our, bath tuna. And, you've got to love what you're doing, because life is going to happen regardless of what else is going on. And so while life is happening, can your passion for your why and why you're doing this be enough to get you through when life is happening too? And so if we start out without the passion, I don't know that we're going to grow it organically. I think you're going to come in and you're either going to be super excited and tell me all about it. If they come in and they're like, well, I'm still looking at this other one too, I'm going to be like, well, I think this is a premature call.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. How comfortable are you just wrapping it up and saying, hey, I don't think this is a good fit? Have you had that conversation?
I've gotten more comfortable with it. We've done it, you know, I'm not going to say that we do it a lot, but we definitely every year, there's probably anywhere from 5 to 10 that we don't feel are culturally fit. Now, it doesn't always have to be me. My development team is amazing and they have been doing this for a long time and they usually see it before I do.
Good.
You know, they're going to see it in their questions. So it's pretty rare that somebody gets that call with me and they're not already pretty passionate. But if it does happen, if sometimes they're like, well, I think that maybe just talk to them, maybe they're on the fence about that person and they want me to pull them off the fence one way or the other, we'll do that. So yeah, a lot of times I am looking for the culture. I'm looking for, you know, how they see themselves running the business, what hats they're going to wear, all those things that I think everyone is. And I'm reviewing what has already been asked and answered in our notes and just seeing if we're getting similar responses too, right?
Yeah.
You know, has anything changed since this started? You know, is anything, you know, because everyone's got fear factor and you should. If you're not scared of it a little bit, then, you know, you probably aren't being too sensible, but you can't be so scared that you're, you know, I have to just give so much credit to everybody that bought a business during COVID and are still buying businesses, because can you imagine you're a little nervous about a business and now you have this piled on top of it? I mean, all of a sudden you've got to be one of the most, you know, I guess somebody that's willing to get through just about anything. They're like, listen, I'm going to come through this thing and be strong because I believe in myself. I don't know, that's some traits that I think are going to be long lived after this pandemic is through.
Oh yeah, well, those are winners, right? And no matter where you plant them, they're going to be the best at whatever they do because they've got the internal dialogue that supports the growth. Yeah, I love
That's
that.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's another topic for another time. We could probably flesh out mindset and DWAC,
Yes.
all sorts of good stuff to discuss there. So last thing I want to ask you about is you mentioned as we were just about to start recording that you've started doing reunions and some virtual meetings with Tunies. I've been involved in a lot of virtual meetings and conferences, and most of them are really not good. So I would love to pick your brain. I hope many people that are hosting conferences in and out of franchising are listening to this discussion.
Sure.
I don't mean to be rude, but there are good ways to do it. And I've only been to one good virtual conference out of maybe a dozen. So I'd love to hear, what have you found helps to engage and get people to find value in getting together virtually when it's not as much fun as getting together in person?
Well, I've been a part of two really great ones now. So we did ours in September of 2020. I know the year was like so long. And then in February of 2021, HFC did one with all their brands and did an amazing job. And I'll say the one thing is you can't just use Zoom, right? You do need a platform. I think that's really critical. I would say that the prep before is so important, you know, making sure we sent everyone a camera. We made sure all of our suppliers had cameras and mics, so that there were some similarities for quality. We felt like that was going to be really important. And we did, you know, we worked, our team actually called every single person and tested before it started. So we didn't have really any technology glitches at all, which, you know, that's what everyone is, you know, spending their time, you know, hoping that nothing happens. We did it and ran it just like a regular reunion for us. So just like I did my first training school, we kind of looked at our agenda, figured out what to do. Of course, we had to send a box, you know, we called it the reunion survival kit, and everybody had their survival kit. And when we did the same sort of sessions, we did breakouts, we had a supplier show where our suppliers came on and they got to go into different rooms and move around, and we had an awards banquet. We had congratulation rooms after the awards banquet where the winners could go into a room and have people come in. We sent pre-wrapped awards so that when the awards were happening, we could spotlight that person. They could open their award and hold it up. You know, I just felt like at the end, by the midday, even the most skeptical owners that never thought that the virtual could replace it were like, it felt like we were just at a reunion, because we would go into this lunchroom and we would talk to this group of people. We would go to this round table. We would go over here. And it felt like we were still like in a room together. I think it was just the matter of going at it, and we encouraged everyone to have, you know, a great attitude and go forward. We brought in a speaker. We did all those things that we would do naturally. and we dressed up for the awards banquet, and we did all of that stuff, and the people, the franchises did too. And then they got on camera and they were sending us pictures, beforehand and we could use those in the photo albums and stuff. So I think a lot of it was just the willingness of the franchise owners to embrace it. I think that was so critical. Like if we would have been bemoaning it, I know this isn't our first choice, but we didn't. We said, isn't this exciting, guys? I can't wait to see everybody. This is going to be just amazing. And you guys can be comfortable and sleeping in your beds, and we're going to still have a great time. And then HFC did a really amazing job because theirs was even larger, of course. I think we were navigating around 220 between suppliers and owners and homies and stuff. And they had, thousands. But they, again, similar platforms. They did a lot of things with boxes beforehand and did a lot of hospitality, which is always helpful. And so I really think that it really comes down to everyone collaborating together and not bashing it. It was one tip I gave to everybody when we started out is don't start any of your trainings by apologizing for being virtual. Because all it does is it forces you to think that maybe you're getting something less than. Instead, I'm so excited that we can do this. Could you imagine 5 or 10 years ago this wasn't available? I'm so excited we get to do this today and not stop anything that we're learning.
Yeah, and because the reality is the alternative was nothing, right? The alternative was nothing, and so yeah, and that's what kind of bumps me out sometimes about the events is they are apologetic and they didn't do the prep work beforehand, and frankly, I'll give them credit because these are industries where technology isn't predominant. They don't need it typically. And the best part about like IFA, for example, best part about that is the lobby, like where you just run into everyone and you see everyone. Like those things you can't quite replace. But I love what you described when in your discovery days or in your trainings where you're leaving rooms open.
Yes.
And go see each other because frankly, everybody wants to go give Red Boswell a high five, like right? And
in the morning we would say, come in early, like you would if you're going, the early risers that go to have breakfast together and they're always engaged. And I would go in there and it would be 30 minutes before anything started, and there was like 40 people in there gabbing away.
Oh my goodness! See, how cool is that? How cool?
Yeah. And so that's how you replace it, right? Is you don't structure it to the point where there's no time for them just to talk. Yeah. And just to have a moment and conversation. And I think that we invited that. And then the next day there would always be a storyteller that wanted to talk, through a story. And they would usually hold court live too. You know the owners that hold court and they just have these great stories and everybody can't wait to listen. And they were doing that virtually. It was great.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, I love it. Well, this is fantastic. Any other, what else did you learn? I mean, overall, or what's next for you guys? Where do you feel like you're going to innovate next, if you don't mind sharing, or tell me some other lessons you've learned we haven't discussed yet.
Just feels like, was last year 10 years or just a year? I don't know. Because there just seemed like there was a lot going on, but not necessarily, I don't tend to look at it as being bad. I think that it was such a great learning. I think we accelerated everything that we probably would have been doing 5 or 10 years from now, we just accelerated it in a 1-year time period. So it kept everyone really busy. But I think the next thing for us is to come up with a hybrid of a little bit of both. Doing some things because we do believe that people at least still believe that it's a better experience if it's live, right? I still think that if people had to rank it, they would still put live as their number 1 choice. Yep. But at the same time, what we've learned is that the virtual actually makes a faster starting franchise. So we looked at our different agendas and said, what is the most important thing to do live? And we're probably going to half it to start with and then take some notes and then see if we want to even do it differently so that there is a little time in the office absorbing the culture, at the home plate. And then the rest of it being done the way we've kind of found our best practices virtually. And we're planning right now on a live reunion in the fall. And, already people are asking, for the recordings because we were able to keep our recordings live for a whole year after our reunion and people are still using them. They're still going back and using them for trainings and they're still going back and rewatching a session. And so we've got to figure that out. But HFC is really great with IT and figuring out how to get the cameras and everything set. That was not something that we did a lot of. The HFC's done a lot of that. So I'm excited that they're going to help us to come up with a way to record some best tips and things that we can have that for the future, but also allow that the people that want to be there live can.
Yeah, they've actually got an incredible tech team. I've met several of them before, and they're very intelligent, very capable people.
Yes.
Lots of great experience. This is the beauty of you entering into that kind of partnership with them, is now your depth chart on technology just got really, really deep.
Oh, on lots of things, but yes, for
Marketing.
sure, technology. I mean, I had some great people in IT, but they love too being able to have these other resources, and just being able to bounce those ideas off of people that have been doing this, for different brands and different ways and stuff. That's always amazing.
Oh yeah.
Which I love what you're doing too, because you're helping other brands bounce each other ideas off each other and helping them to expand through just having these conversations too.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm really grateful that you made time to join me. I know you're busy. 75 new brands next year, or new locations this year will be probably, hopefully about the same. So you guys,
it's tracking right now. So.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me carve out 45 minutes of your day, Heidi, and thanks for letting me extract so many good ideas. I'll share these with anybody who follows the podcast and in social media and tag you. And yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate you.
Dave.
Yeah.